that are eroding post World War II institution. One of the main reasons of this situation has been a massive change in the global economic balance of power. A major group of countries now challenging the global governance model set at the end of the Second World War. To be fair, one of these institutions of the global economy was not strictly linked to the World War II, but was linked to the very beginning of the Cold War. It is the OECD. Since the end of the 1980s, the three main international institutions were strongly challenged. These institutions were the IMF, which failed to protect the world both in the 1997-1999 crisis, the so-called Asian plus Russian crisis, and then again on the so-called subprime crisis. The World Bank itself has been in a process of deep criticism since the 1990s, and disenchantment with World Bank policies is nothing new and began actually by the end of the 1990s or the early year of the 2000s. What is much more interesting is the case of WTO. The WTO has been unable to do its work since the crisis of the Doha round. And, the Doha round was launched in 2004. So we have now nearly 20 years of still out of the WTO. The emergence of the BRICS, and since January of this year, of BRICS Plus, with the addition of 5 newer countries, has been the cumulative result of a long history of dissatisfaction with the working of this global institution. You have to remember that, at least for the IMF and the World Bank, they have been created in a time where big empire, a big colonial empire, were still ruling the world. It was the case of the British Empire, even if it collapsed between 1948 to 1952, of the French Empire, which began to collapse first in 1954 in the Far East, with the crushing defeat suffered by the French army at Dien Bien Phu, and which completely collapsed by the end of the 50s or the very beginning of the 60s. So it is not a so strange history to see that institution created in a completely different world are no more relevant in the new world. But we have another problem. The diminishing share of the global wealth in the world GDP and the growth experienced by emerging powers like China and India have probably pushed toward and faster toward obsolescence most of the global economy institutions that were generated by the Second World War and the Cold War. However, an institution rarely dies of simple irrelevance. We have still with us some institutions which are no more relevant in their traditional role, like the Bank of International Settlement, created, I remind you, in the beginning of the 30s to manage the so-called German debt problem, and which developed into a kind of large surveillance financial institution. Now you have to look how the shares of the BRICS Plus, and ones of the G7 and the so-called collective West are in world GDP, in PPP, have been evolving. As you can see, there have been not so much results from 1992 to 1999 or 2000. But after that, the drop of the G7 share was absolutely outstanding, and it was equal to 46% of the world GDP by 1992. It was no more than something like 30% in 2020. In return, the BRICS, which of course don't formally existed in 1992, even were not existing in 1999, have increased their share to the point that the two curves have been crossing in 2020, and the curve of the BRIC Plus and the so-called collective West have crossed probably at the end of 2023. Second point, from BRIC to BRICS and then to BRICS Plus, 2 decades of massive change. Global economic governance has then fallen from Western hands, partly because of these objective change, which are constituting the objective factor or the objective basis of this change. But this change have been accompanied by subjective factors like the ill-fated US policy of trying to punish countries which were making trade with countries that the United States wanted to segregate, and also a policy of generalization of the practice of unilateral and illegal sanctions. I remember you in the Treaty of 1944. Sanctions are legal only if they have been decided by the Security Council. Each sanction made without the support of the Security Council had then to be considered as illegal. This is quite interesting. As a matter of fact, sanctions succeeded when they were legal. There is one fairly well-known case, that's sanctions against Rhodesia. And even in the case of sanctions against Rhodesia, a country which was implementing a harsher model of segregated policy, it took nearly 15 years. So we have this problem, and then this is leading us to what I have called the bargaining game. That is, it amounts to a kind of voluntary, or even in some cases, non-voluntary decision to take into actions requests made by some of the poorest countries. Of course, the United States accepted to see their power diluted in the IMF. The IMF was opened to decolonized countries, but the share of votes of the United States still became a kind of safety trip which made extremely difficult to change rules and norms inside the IMF. Before its notorious accident in 2011, I talked about that with Dominique Strauss-Kahn, who had been my professor, or more precisely, the leading professor of the department where I was studying in the University of Nanterre. And I told him, because he really wanted to give China and India a decent share of power inside the IMF. I told him that it will run into huge huge political problems with the United States, and he had to be prepared for that. We know that he don't. Overall, the negotiations were so conflictual and so globally unsuccessful that it is now common to talk about the death of the Doha round, and this death was a significant one, as it broke one of the last links of discussion between what were still not the global North and the global South. In response, more and more states have turned toward bilateral and regional economic partnership. The recent conclusion of such agreement also called New Free Trade Generation Agreement, such as the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific or the ill-fated CETA between the European Union and Canada, or even the development of a regional agreement, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, led by China, and including now 16 Asian and Oceanian states, are probably the best example to this trend. Just remember, 3 years ago, the very strong Australian reaction to the attempt of China to develop economic relationship with Solomon Islands. Of course, if you are in the head of an Australian, you knew too much that the Solomon Islands have been the most advanced point of Japanese forces in 1942-1943. But we are supposed not to be in a situation of war. And so Chinese politicians began to reason as if countries of the global West have switched to a kind of not so new Cold War, but at least of a confrontational policy. So the third problem, institutional power and institutional building. So this inability to make administration and to make institution to change settles the point between still fighting to obtain a significant change in existing discussion. It gave a considerable credibility to the exit options, since in any discussion implying a balance between several countries, the voice had to be a credible one with possible result. It was not. So it pushed, maybe as a kind of second best, the Chinese government to increase cooperation and integration inside the BRICS. But what has not probably been anticipated was that once the decision of exit has been taken, it would attract so much country. As a matter of fact, the 2019 increase has not been introduced in computation. So, what is the New Development Bank for? On the paper, the New Development Bank is just another financial organization. But if you are looking carefully to the structure of this organization, you could see that no country, neither China, nor India, nor Russia, nor Brazil, had more than 18% of shares, which is quite different, you know. Of the regional comprehensive economic partnership led by China and including 16 Asian and Oceanian states. The Chinese government has probably understood that it will foster very much its interest by advancing onto the mask of a new kind of more equal institutions. It is quite clear now that global economy institutions are either collapsing or on the verge to collapse. This is a result of a sweeping change in the economic balance of power since the late 1990s. It has been a story of protracted and too late reforms and of the emergence of the new collective actor that was called the BRICS. The fact that the United States and other countries have not understood the threat for their global dominance with the creation of the new development bank is telling us very much about the development of the power of the BRICS, and more so of the fact that the BRICS are developing now a kind of different kind of norms and rules which are baked by a growing number of countries. This actor, BRICS, is now powerful enough to make some important change in the structure of the global economy, in the fight for a radical reform of the world economic institution. It could ask either for a greater share of power in existing institutions, or for a complete change of rule and not defining these institutions. As a matter of fact, both ways were tried, but the idea of making a fight inside existing institutions, like the World Bank or like the IMF, was inducing, as a matter of fact, major crisis of existing institutions. But a crisis is not an end by itself. A collapse is not to be complete till new institutions are not to be created. We then have to look to the possible pattern of institutional creation, and particularly to the case of the new development bank. So let me now to describe you the different pattern of power inside institutions. You had the three more or less linked to World War II institution, World Bank, International Monetary Fund, and of course the International Inter-American Development Bank. We have a very specific bank, Corporación Andina de Fomento, and we have, of course, the NDB. This is quite interesting. Nearly all institutions are very monocentric. Even if the United States are not detaining the totality of voice inside the IMF, it still have a minority for a veto and could then block any attempt to change the rules and the behavior and the norm of these institutions. Financial resource was to be the exchange rate for this quite dominative position, because for the World Bank, for the International Monetary Bank, and of course for the Inter-American Development Bank, all these banks could rely on to the power of the US Treasury. Corporación Andina de Fomento was much more reduced to countries which had already make a loan to this corporation. But in the new development bank, we had we have no the dimension of monocentric. As I have said, the weight of the United States, of the China, is 18.45. It is exactly the same weight for India, for Russia, and for Brazil, and also for South Africa. Actually, the initial level of share was decreased to integrate shares of newer countries, which are still developing, but which are quite reserved in their development. In the end of the end, countries of the global south or of the south are considering now condition to Western help to be much more efficient and much more cooperative for them. What is also an interesting problem is the fact that bonds emitted by the new development bank are finding very, very easy customer, mostly on financial market in the southeast countries. You have to look at the situation on the Singapore financial market. So we are seeing the kind of change where countries are more or less, sometimes without saying it, sometimes by saying it, beginning to be estranged to the Western-dominated financial market. The next move on this topic will be the refund capability of the NDB through crypto assets and through agreement between countries to countries. So we are back to a reflection that I was making at the beginning of this paper. You could have all the financial institutions which are deep in crisis, but without the creation of a new kind of organization, it is extremely difficult to see the beginning of the demise of the old international institution. What is taking place with the NDB is certainly something like a huge momentum in international finance, in international political economy. And it will, as far we can say, it will develop quite quickly in the next 5 to 15 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sapir, for your very interesting and valuable lecture. And now I would like to welcome the audience to ask the smartest questions you can, as I said in the beginning, and those who still didn't guess the midterm evaluation, please think deep, because it's time X. So ask questions. Please, guys, raise your hands, those who would like to address the questions. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes, hello. What do you think about BRICS transition to digital renminbi, I mean digital yuan?
Could you repeat once again?
What do you think about BRICS transition to digital renminbi, I mean digital yuan?
We have to see how it will evolve. So far, the NDB has no real needs to rely on this kind of instrument. But, and this is important, it is preparing for the use, if necessary, of this kind of new instrument. So, as I've told you, wait and see.
Thank you.
Other questions, please?
Thank you for your lecture. I would like to ask you probably a question that relates not only to the global problems and issues, but first of all the BRICS issue. As far as we know, as also you have mentioned, that we have developing the BRICS Plus organization. The BRICS is still evolving, and the new members have already want to participate in this organization. But what do you think about the implementation and invention of the regional, how should I put it correctly? So, for example, in Europe we have euro. Should we expect something in BRICS region? For example, the one.
Well,
currency. So we need to think about the currency, the one currency in BRICS region. What do you think about it? Should we wait for it as a part of the integration of the BRICS? Thank you.
you know, we don't know. What we know is that this process of the victory of an exit strategy over a voice strategy has no about quite of efficiency in the new development bank. It is quite fairly the development of new, much more, I would say, accommodative sets of norms in some countries. But the fact that the USA has stalled the reform of the IMF in 2014, 2016, is telling us that for some reason we are not to say this change to appear among developed countries.
Thank you very much. Forecasts are a tricky thing, guys, not just forecasting. We're not asking about what's the next stage of evolution from the professor, okay? Thank you, please.
Thank you for the lecture, Professor. What would you say are the main challenges for a regional partnership like the BRICS or the...
Louder, please.
What would you say are the main challenges for a regional partnership like the BRICS Plus, or the regional RCEP in terms of overcoming the Western economic dominance in future as well? It is going good, but I feel there are certain challenges which we need to be cautious of in future.
As a matter of fact, we don't know precisely the condition of adhesion to the NDB. Of course, we have the political conditions, which are not more than one or two cases, and we don't have the problem of the discussion of the technical range of maneuver or range of internal reform that countries have to begin. As a matter of fact, some countries made their adhesion to the NDB before the adhesion of the country to the BRICS. Egypt, a country of the Gulf. So we can think that the fact that there will be a real, if not transparency, but at least accountability for this adhesion is certainly quite important.
Thank you. And one more question from a lady, please.
One more time, thank you for the lecture and provided facts. The thing that worried me during your lecture was the question whether the invention and improvement of a new supernatural organization such as New Development Bank and its competitiveness with the existing development bank, won't it increase the differences that already exist in international economy and the issues that are always in question between global south and global north. What I mean is that the invention of new organizations that consist of new countries which had little voice in that previously established organizations wanted lead to even more segregation of power in the world. I mean, new organizations are great, but if we continue developing new organizations consisting of only North or of only South countries, won't we be even further from the idea of globalization?
Well, we know that for some countries adhering to the NDB has been seen as the first step of an adhesion to the BRICS. One country didn't understand that, and this is why it is trapped in quite a bad solution. This is Algeria. So I think that we have, of course, some official relationship, and we have also some under the back condition which are not meted by every country.
Thank you. And a question from our international students, please.
Yes, so hello, Professor. Yes, just after our group decision, yes. So our question is, what do you think is the advantage of NDB over the World Bank, and will the NDB become the world-class organization in the future? Yes, thank you.
Should we repeat the question, maybe?
Yes, yes.
So our question is, what do you think is the advantage of the NDB over the World Bank?
A very good example will be will Algeria will succeed in next August to be part of the BRICS? If yes, that could ease some tensions that could be developing in North Africa. But, as I've said, it is not because a country doesn't follow the USA and the US policy on every point that it will be blocked, or in another way, it will be adopted or co-opted into the new BRICS or the third wave of integration. This is, we are living quite a tricky moment. I just don't know where the size of the peace will fall and what will be the result. I can just say that if Algerian government is making very strongly the case of reaction of its political economy and of its political development, it will probably be answered like it was in December of last year. A country who wanted to cooperate or integrate the BRICS has first to demonstrate what could be its potential for development of the BRICS and these institutions.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Thank you.
So, bonjour. Merci, Hélène, conference. But I want to ask you a question on English. So, the modern world is divided on the two blocks, as West countries and the bloc as BRICS. So, but BRICS architecture is based on the investitions from West countries. And the Ukrainian crisis has already shown that China and India are not ready to go in against the West countries. So how can we build a new world if there is still a hegemon as USA?
As I said half an hour ago, we could have thought that the long tradition of cooperation of Algeria and Russia could settle the debate. It has not. So I think that Sergei Lavrov put the balloon in the so-called stop game space, and that the Algerian government will have to very cleverly begin its project of development of the country before presenting it to the BRICS and the BRICS Plus administration.
Thank you very much. And maybe a couple, three more questions, and maybe we will wrap up. So one more smart question from our student, please, Nikolai.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Professor, for your time and for this very interesting lecture. Well, I actually have two very brief questions, and if you don't like them, you may not answer me. It's obvious that the West is in decline, and BRICS is kind of emerging as a new political and economic center of power. So maybe this question will be considered unpopular, but do you think that the West has any chance of regaining its full strength? I mean, total economic and political dominance. And also, if I'm not mistaken, you are a renowned Eurosceptic. So you think that France should exit the European Union. And here is the second question. Is it possible that France will join Brexit Plus and Russia will be best friends with France as two countries once again? Thank you.
Well, you know that, of course, Algerians have been deeply disappointed by the result of the last BRIC summit. They were so much attend a kind of formal invitation to be part of the organization. They have to understand why it has not been the case. Because I don't think it was only Russia that blocked the process. It's probably other countries, again, China, India. So this is a very important problem. And till the Algerian government will make a geopolitical argument before economic argument will make political opposition to the United States and not the development of a new argument for the development of some countries. I think that this deception could be mimicked, and they could be, sent back to 2025, 2026.
Thank you very much. So we have 1, 2, 3 more questions, and we will wrap up and thank our professor once again. Please, a question from Anastasia. Yes.
Hello. Merci pour la conférence intéressante. So my question is that China is expanding throughout the world, building infrastructure, lending to countries, pumping resources out of Africa. Do you see a threat of replacing USA influence with China, and what to do about it? I can repeat.
The real question is both a question of technical geoeconomics, that is, are the Algerian government really to accept and combine the fact that the BRICS Plus are now belonging by rules and norms. Of course, now they are more or less defining rules and norms. But here again, the last declaration of Sergei Lavrov are not steering us toward a real development of Algeria and global BRICS power countries.
Thank you. Your question, please.
Hello, Professor. Thank you so much for your lecture. I really appreciate it. So I have a small question. When you mentioned that there is a collapse of global economic institutions, so during this situation happens, I'm a little curious about, so the government and the global economies, they will choose to do the recovery plan, or they will to establish new structures or the new institutions. I'm a little curious about the lectures, and so if they have the recovery plan or like recovery structures, what kind of the key most essential indicators in this situation? Thank you so much.
There is a certain way of travel under condition of adhesion for the BRICS. It's obvious. And I think that main countries of the BRICS, Germany, China, the fact that Pakistan was also involved in the trade, we're having different targets or different evolution is to be into account.
Thank you. And the last question from Yelena, please.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for your lecture, Professor. And my question is, what do you think, what are perspectives of institutionalizations of BRICS as an organization like European Union, like the Eurasian Economic Union, or, for example, the United Nations, etc.? Because, for example, my diploma work related to BRICS and related to this theme, literally, and what do you think, how is it possible to do? Thank you.
Here again, on I can't tell you anything solid on this question. We know that so far BRICS are not looking with a favorable eyes the adhesion of Algeria. That could be changed during the half part of 2024. But, as a matter of fact, it seems to me that you have still quite a large number of countries which are opposing the adhesion of newer country like Algeria in the BRICS.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sapir. Once again, we do appreciate your time, your valuable time, your effort, and your energy that you invested into this lecture and discussion. Thank you very much for coming. And we would like to give you small presents. These are from our 30th anniversary that we had last year. So it's a book about our faculty and just small souvenirs that will remind you about our faculty.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for coming. Thank you.